You are listening to Season 7 of the award-winning Christian Outdoors podcast with your host, Pete Rogers. This show is being brought to you by Taurus USA. And I'm sure many of you already know, but I have been a fan of Taurus for decades, and I take one with me everywhere I go. Thank you to Taurus for supporting our show. All right, everyone, welcome back to Christian Outdoors Podcast. I'm your host, Pete Rogers, and today we're continuing our bass fishing series of one of the most respected anglers in the sport, the 2019 Bassmaster Classic Champion, Mr. Ott DeFoe. Ott has built a reputation as one of the most consistent competitors on the professional circuit. Over an 8-year span, he finished in the top 20 in more than half of the bass events he entered and cashed a check in nearly 70% of his tournaments, an incredible level of consistency at the highest level of the sport. His list of accomplishments are very impressive. He's the 2019 Bassmaster Classic Champion, won the Bass Pro Tour Stage 3 in 2020, captured the Bass Pro Tour Heritage Cup in 21, claimed the Heavy Hitters title in 22, along with its $100,000 grand prize, teamed up with Andy Montgomery to win the Knighten Industries Heritage Cup in 24, and in 25, put on a dominating performance by winning the Bass Pro Tour Stage 6 on the Potomac River by more than 20 pounds. Today, we're looking forward to hearing about his career, his approach to staying consistently successful, as well as his passion for his faith. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Ott DeFoe. Ott, thank you for joining me today, brother.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me. Excited to be here and talk some fishing, talk about our Lord, and have a good time.
Boy, it doesn't get much better than that, does it?
I don't think so.
It does not get much better than that. The thing that when I talk to other bass anglers, and I said this pre-recording, everybody says you need to talk to Ott. The consistency in which you have been able to be in the money. I mean, more than 70% of the tournaments that cash, that is unbelievable. I mean, that really is. And able to do it for such a long time. What do you attribute that to, Ott?
Man, Pete, it really goes to, I look back at when I started and I didn't have any sponsorship, to speak of whatsoever. So yeah. I needed to cash a check and, cashing a check was the only way I was going to be able to keep going.
Right.
And especially back in those days, just catching a limit every day in a multi-day tournament was usually going to get you pretty close. And so that got me in the mindset early on of trying to catch a limit. Like every day I go fishing, catch a limit, and try to do that as early in the day as I possibly could. Even if I take a Lake Gunnersville, for example, and it be fishing good and, your goal weight would be 20 pounds or something. If I knew a place I could catch 12 pounds quick, I was going to go try to catch 12 pounds quick because then it was really easy to get to 14 or 15 where I would, be in the check range. And so it came from necessity early on because getting a check was necessary for me to keep fishing, competitively at a high level. So that's certainly what I attribute the way that I structured my fishing early on. Was I got to catch 5 and need to catch them as quick as I can.
Yeah. When did you officially turn pro?
I started fishing professional level events 2006. I started the FLW series in 2006. So it's been over 20 seasons worth. I started on the FLW tour in 2007. So that 2006 season, I kind of consider professional level type stuff. There were only like 5 events in that FLW series that year. But it was a high level competition, big entry fees, big paybacks, that kind of stuff. So 2006 is kind of when I mark it back in the calendar of when I started professional fishing.
Man, you look barely old enough to have fished 10 years, that's 20.
Yeah, the lighting's hiding a lot of gray.
You see there? Yeah. It goes white quick. It goes white quick.
Yeah.
Probably all the stress of trying to catch 5 fish, right?
They're trying to catch 5 and raise kids and all that fun
stuff.
Yeah.
And for the listener, it's not just about catching 5 fish. You have to find 5 good fish, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the way I understand it, most recreational anglers are just tickled to catch 5 fish.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So what is the difference in the mindset of a professional angler that says, okay, I have to catch 5 good fish. Like you said, if your target is 20 pounds, that's 4 pound average.
Right.
If my math is right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a lot of guys who can fish, recreationally, never catch a 4 pounder in an entire spring, summer, and fall.
Yeah.
And you got to do that five times a day,
Right.
for what, 3 days, 4 days?
Yeah,
Depending.
depending on the event. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It is, and every fishery is different. I mean, certain fisheries, obviously, you need that kind of weight, but at other fisheries, even 20 pounds a day isn't very good. So,
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
you're really just trying to judge it by some places, because some places that we fished, a 2.5 pounder was the equivalent to a 4 or 5 pounder in other fisheries. I mean, I can think of
That's
like
well said.
Pennsylvania
Yeah.
River down in Texas, and man, a 2.5 pounder there was like gold.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it
On
just
Chickamauga, that's a coalfish. Yeah.
yeah, exactly,
Yeah.
But it just you wrap your mind around that of really trying to find a couple of those key bites in a day, whatever size fish that key bite ends up being. But with Major League Fishing and the Bass Pro Tour, we don't even get to just settle for 5. We got to catch them all day long.
Yeah.
And because of our format of every fish counts, we have a minimum weight. And most fisheries we go to, that's 2 pounds, which isn't a small fish.
Right.
That's depending on where you're at. You're talking of 15, 16-inch long fish, so I mean, most places considerably bigger than what a keeper is.
Right.
So it's, but you don't just need 5 of them. You need every 2 pound, 3 pound, 4 pound, 5 pound, however big they are, every one of them you can possibly catch.
Man, that's a great segue to my next question. So, in Major League Fishing, for the audience who may not understand, as you said, it's not a 5 fish limit. It is as many as you can catch over that minimum size.
Correct.
During a time period.
Mhm.
Okay. Do you find that more challenging than trying to find 5 big fish, or do you find it easier? Now every fish counts. I don't have to cull anything. As long as it's over 2 pounds, I can count it. Do you find that more rewarding or easier, or you find that more stressful and more difficult?
There's no question it's more stressful. No
Oh,
question it's more stressful. A 5 fish limit is restrictor plate racing,
oh,
right? I mean, because you go to Grand Lake where our last event was, um, the most anybody was probably going to catch there would be 25. If they caught a 5 fish limit, 25 would be a big catch. 20 would be good. 17 or 18 was pretty solid, if you're
yeah,
talking 5 fish limit tournament.
yeah,
Man, with ours, you could catch 60, 70, 80 pounds in a day. You could go out and have a pretty decent day of fishing and caught 7 or 8 keepers and would have had 20, 21, 22 pounds on paper, looked pretty good. But you caught 8 fish all day. You just had a couple big ones, and so it looked really good. Well,
yeah,
with our format, you see that you really didn't catch all that many. You just got fortunate that a couple of the ones you caught were big ones, and so it creates a much bigger spread in the weights throughout the field. Obviously, being able to count every single fish. What it does allow for is it allows for a big comeback. You can have at Grand, say you went out there the first day of the tournament and you just had the wheels came completely off the bus and you caught 2 or 3 keepers. You're in a 5 fish limit, you cannot recover from that.
that's true. Yeah,
In ours, you still can, because you could go out and have a day where you caught 70, 80, 90 pounds. And so you can truly recover from it. So it's different. On the Bass Pro Tour, we fished one season that was a 5 fish year. And obviously everything I fished coming up, everything else, BFLs, Toyota, Bassmaster Opens, Bassmaster Elite Series, Classics, everything else is 5 fish limit. Still
yeah,
is. I don't know if it'll ever change, but on the Bass Pro Tour, we have been every fish counts except for one season. That one season was personally my best year for making top tens. So as an angler, like if I was personally looking at it and say what, I've won more events on Bass Pro Tour. Yeah, I didn't win any that year that it was a 5 fish year, but I had a lot of top tens. But So everything I've won on Bass Pro Tour has been in every fish counts format. But as an angler, does it personally fit me better for 5 fish? Probably, truthfully. Yeah. But man, I love the every fish counts, and I think the reason I like it better, it has been good to me, but I like it better because if you and I go fishing today and we go out and we catch eight or nine fish, a couple of them are really nice ones, a couple of them are decent, a couple of them are small, and we had an okay day of fishing. Yeah. If you and I go out and we catch 25, we catch 30, we catch 50, and there are just a lot of
amazing day. Yeah.
Just a lot of nice fish. That was an amazing day of fishing. And
you remember that one. Yeah.
We left the lake being like, dude, that was a good time. Right. Well, you have to count every one of them.
Yeah.
So to me, it's just a better measure of the day, as an angler.
Yeah. I kind of, as an observer, and a fan of the sport, I kind of agree with that. I like the every fish counts because looking at it from a recreational side, and you just defined it very well or described it very well, is when two buddies go out fishing, they catch 30 fish, they remember that the rest of their life. They go out and catch 6 or 8, even though they had some good ones in there. It's like, it's okay day.
Yeah. Well, okay. We got, because even in your mind at that point, and I had plenty of those days that looked really good on paper and got paid well for them, where I just went over here and I caught one fish over there. Well, it's a 5-pounder.
Yeah.
I went over there and fished around and caught a couple. There's a 1.5-pounder and a 3.5-pounder. Mm-hmm. And I go over here and I catch another random 4-pounder. Oh, man, at the end of the day, I looked like I knew what I was doing. I didn't have the fish I caught were good size. Like I didn't think that, So,
yeah. I do know that. How would you describe your technique? In other words, there are guys who consider themselves finesse fishermen. There are guys who consider them power fishermen, which is something I've never really understood what that means, other than they throw crankbaits hard and spinnerbaits fast. How would you define yours?
Yeah, I shallow water for sure is my preference. Shallow water with current would be even more so. So whether that's a creek or a river or some type of current, flowing in a system or flowing through a system, that's what I like best for sure. Shallow water with current, off colored.
Shallow meaning no deeper than 10 feet or 5 or
even 5. Yeah. Okay. Fish less than 5 foot, would be, what I enjoy the most, what I like the best. Feel like my skill set, is better than average at, I guess you would say. But that's what I like the best. And a lot of that comes down to, just casting accuracy. That's something that with shallow water fishing, target fishing, I think so many people either overlook or they just don't work on that part of their game often enough, or whatever the case may be. But the fish that I catch, so many of those fish that you catch fishing like that, you could have caught them on 10 different baits because of where the fish is at, how it's positioned. Like it would bit almost anything that you threw in there, so it's just being able to make a good, accurate cast and get the bait in front of that fish where it's at. So, and that's something that I've spent a lot of time working on. And, it's something that I certainly enjoy. So whether that's pitching a jig in the cover, if that's skipping a wacky worm under a dock, if it's throwing a square wheel down the side of a lay down or whatever it is, but shallow water cover. And if you got current in the mix, it's certainly what I like.
And that's interesting you say that, because as a recreational angler, that's what I enjoy as well. I really love river fishing.
Yeah.
You can have the big reservoirs, that water gets beat to a froth, here in South Carolina, Lake Murray and Lake Greenwood and Hartwell and all those. They just, I don't know how there's not a fish out there with sore lips. There's so many anglers out there, but if you go upriver, you can have just about the place to yourself.
Yeah.
You can have it to yourself. Now they are, dam released waters, right? So you got to deal with that. You got to be, when they're not full throttle releasing water, because then it's just chaotic. The current gets so strong there between the lakes that it can be very difficult for a recreational guy. And then the water gets so dingy and is rising so fast and makes it hard. So you got to catch it at the right time. It's kind of like fishing salt water, where you got to pay attention to the tides. Is the water dropping, or is the water rising, or is it, or are you in a slack tide? That's the way I approach river fishing.
This portion of the show being brought to you by the CVA Cascade XT. Not every hunt needs a full long-range rig. Sometimes you need a rifle that's tough, balanced, and ready for weather. The CVA Cascade XT. It builds on the Cascade platform with upgraded finishes, a medium contoured fluted Bergara barrel, radial muzzle brake, oversized bolt knob, and adjustable trigger. It's made for hunters who want more control, more durability, and more precision without overcomplicating the setup. CVA, every season, every range.
I want to ask you a question. It's kind of loaded, and you get this a lot from us guys, is how has the technology helped or hurt professional bass fishing?
Yeah.
And we're not even going to get to forward facing yet, just technology in general.
Technology in general. Okay. Yeah. Okay. As a professional angler, it's made things, the first thing I think of is how much easier it's made navigation. Okay. When I started my, trying to fish bigger regional tournaments, I graduated high school in 2003, 2004, that spring. I signed up to fish what was the EverStart series back then. It was what the Toyotas are now. First event on Lake Okeechobee. So back then I had a boat that was 8 years old that had flashers on it, the round Lowrance flashers. I had one at the front, one at the back.
That's a big lake. That's a big lake.
Okeechobee's a big lake. That was all I had. I didn't have a GPS. Okay, I had flashers. Well, and you're in Okeechobee, you just stick a rod in the water and see how deep it is. You don't need flashers. So, but the GPS was very important because I needed to be able to find my way back through those little boat trails and get home and not be eaten by gators. So, before I went to that tournament, I bought a little GPS, simply for that reason, to be able to mark trails where I had ran, mark waypoints where I'd caught fish, so I could find that again. And because there truly aren't a lot of landmarks there. I mean, if you've ever been to Okeechobee, it's
just a big bowl.
Just a big bowl. And, unless you're pretty familiar with it, it would be very easy to get out there and get turned around and not know how to get back. Especially I was 18 years old at that point in time, so I wasn't very good at reading a compass either. So that was my first venture into any kind of real technology. Obviously having a flasher, I was able to know how deep it was, so that was a little bit of technology on there. But I think it's starting at those days, and it was just a blank map. Like, it didn't have, it's Okeechobee, so it didn't really matter, but it didn't have depth contour lines on it or anything, of that. But I could tell where the boat ramp was and where I had been, that kind of thing. So, so I think of that as being my start. And then I think of the mapping that we have in our graphs now. And for most of my mapping, I'm not sponsored by them anymore, but I run Humminbird Lake Master mapping, and how good a definition that it has. And I can remember when they were, first mapping a lot of the lakes and stuff. And we'd get an updated card, before we went to a tournament that had freshly been mapped and that kind of stuff. And compared to the other mapping that was out there that was available, whether that was Navionics or whatever else, man, the amount of definition detail that we had with 1 foot contour lines and boat, you go to places in Texas and that have a lot of timber, and it would have the boat lanes marked. There's buoys out there kind of sporadically, but it's got the lanes marked on your map. You just run by that, and navigation, on the Tennessee River and the buoys and all that kind of stuff. So that, to me, that's my first thought, is how much easier it made finding just anything, honestly, but certainly being able to, navigate safely. And, 2D or flasher, honestly, they're almost the same. Like, there were times I probably wish I still had a flasher, because the flasher was so fast, at depth changes and stuff. there was no recording of it, so it wasn't like 2D where you could go back and look at it. But side imaging, when it came along, certainly was a big difference. When you combine side imaging with really good mapping, man, you could find some stuff offshore that was untouched, untapped, that nobody else had ever really fished much. And that's changed the game big time. And I was on kind of the more towards the front end of that. And man, you could just go out there and graph, and you knew you were going to find some stuff that nobody else was fishing and do really well with. So that's what it changed, was the stuff that you couldn't see with your eyes, that stuff that was out offshore a little bit. And because prior to that, it was just put a crankbait in your hand or a Carolina rig in your hand and put the boat in 15 feet of water and start fishing and see what you found, and honestly, you wasn't going to cover a whole lot of ground in a day and get to find a whole lot most times.
Right. All right. Outside of electronics, now this is an amateur's observation, so I could be completely wrong what I'm fixing to say. I have not personally seen any big advancements in, 15, 20 years in rods, reels, or line.
Yeah.
You agree with that?
I think the biggest thing in line would be how much we use braided line on a spinning reel.
Yeah.
90% of the time with a leader. Because I can remember the days going back of trying to throw a shaky head on 8 or 10 pound straight fluorocarbon, and just that line coming off the reel, and how miserable it was, and how short your casting distance was, and just man, it made you never want to use a spinning reel.
It did.
Where with braided line on a spinning reel, just how efficient that is. That to me, of that type of stuff, that would be the single biggest. It's really not. I mean, braided line existed, but most of it was bigger. So that'd probably be the single biggest.
I'll agree with that. As a recreational, again, is that I use a spinning reel 90% of the time now. For just about everything. I mean, if I'm throwing worms or like a Texas rig worm or a jerk bait or a crankbait, I still like the spinning reel for jerk baits. But I'll go to the bait caster for those. But man, I like the efficiency of a spinning reel. I do.
And you would have hated it back then because the way the line.
Exactly. And it wasn't until I started putting braid on them, I'm like, dude, this is the way to go. I don't have to pull out backlashes. I don't have to deal with any of that stuff that that novices deal with a lot. And it's like, you made a great cast and it just spun just a little bit, and I got to pull out my line. I need to be jerking that in that hole, and I'm pulling that line. I don't have to deal with that anymore. And I think I'm a much more accurate caster with this with a spinning reel myself, probably because I use it more. I mean, that's it's interesting you say that. I like that. That. Okay. Let's dive into the elephant in the room here, and the forward facing sonar. I was explaining to my brother about it the other day. I interviewed Randy Howell last week, and he and I were talking about it, and I just want to get your take on the advantages and disadvantages, likes and dislikes of forward facing sonar. But before we do that, explain what it is.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So, what's interesting is how similar it is actually to go back to those flasher days. Okay. So that flasher was instantaneous. Now it was it was a cone, just like 2D sonar is under the boat. That's the way it was pointed. Forward-facing sonar is designed as a slice, so it goes. It's a slice, and most all of them have it where you can point them down, and a lot of them have them now where you can lay it flat, and so then you see, you kind of see this move. But most of us, we have most of the time you have it in a forward-looking position, and you're kind of looking at that slice, and it's like a pie slice, and different brands are different degrees, but it might be an 18 degree or 22 degree or whatever. But that pie slice that you look at, and then it's, for most of us, we mount it on the trolling motor. There are some options of mounting it independently. And a lot of guys in kayaks mount it on a pole and then they can run it by hand, but it's mounted on the trolling motor. And so then wherever you point the trolling motor is where this thing looks.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of the way to explain it. Then you're looking at a slice of the water, a slice that goes out, and then it's going out kind of at a deal like this. So you've got the surface up here, and then depending on just how you can kind of adjust some of this, where you're looking, where you can see underneath the boat, or you're seeing the bottom out in front of the boat, or whatever it may be. But you're seeing this piece of water anywhere that you point that kind of deal like that. But it's like that flasher, and that there's no history. So 2D sonar, side imaging, down imaging, all that stuff scrolls across our screen. We drive by it with a boat, it's recorded, and then we have history. This is real time. It's, if you we're looking at an ultrasound machine, and the way an ultrasound machine would work, there's no history. It's that picture right now.
Yeah,
It's shooting that image, and you're getting that image right now. That is what forward facing sonar is in that slice of water. So you can see your bait, you can see your bait move, you can see fish, you see how they move, you can see, a stationary object, like I'm looking at this pole that's holding my phone right now. You can see that, and then you can see stuff moving around it, whether that's your bait or your fish or whatever that may be. So
how far out does it go?
There's different models, different brands, yada, 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 but most professional anglers run it between a 80-foot and 120-foot range.
Oh, is that far? Okay.
Yeah, wow. That's how far out most guys run it.
So what I call a good casting distance.
Exactly, a good casting distance. A lot of crappie guys only run it 30, 40 feet out. They want it really close and really high definition. But we
don't crappie fish on Christian Outdoors. We crappie fish.
Crappie fish, yeah. Okay. Well, see, the problem with that is if you tell people, say, I'm a crappie fisherman. Nobody wants to be a crappie fisherman. So, B.A.S. better be a crappie fisherman.
That's funny. I'd never heard that one before. You think I'd heard them all. I never heard that one before. That's
I heard that one. That's
a good one.
But what you said it's a good casting distance out, right? Yeah. What I love is the people say, "Oh man, I can throw this bait 100 yards." Actually, I bet you don't, because I can look at it on here and tell you that you're not.
That's how the people say I killed a deer this big.
Right.
And I'll say, hold your hand still. Let me get my tape measure out. Okay. Yeah. That's like 14 inches. That's 16. That's not 16.
Right. Exactly. So that's most people. If you run it out to 120 feet, you're going to see their bait splash.
Yeah.
Somewhere short of 120 feet.
Yeah.
So, less than 40 yards. A 40-yard cast is a very long cast.
Yeah. And that's throwing something heavy like a spook or something too,
like a spook
or a spoon or something that you can just sling out there. Yeah.
Exactly. So,
So,
kind of how it works. So what's the next part of that?
Pros and cons, likes and dislikes.
Yeah. Let's start with the likes, because nobody likes to like it. So the likes about it is what we learn. I mean, it's incredible the learning that bass literally swim around out in the abyss. I personally, I need to get better with it, and I have gotten a lot better with it than I was even a year ago at this time. Still got a long ways to go, but last fall, like October or so, I spent several days on the lake by myself, just trying to get better with it. Mm-hmm. And I was on Norris Lake up here, not too far from home, and I literally caught bass. This lake has no standing timber. Okay, so there's nothing out there, open water. I caught bass over the river channel at over 80, 90, 100 feet of water, on the surface, 3 foot deep, 5 foot deep, 20 foot deep. Caught bass middle of the lake, over the river channel, around bait, not around anything else but bait. They were around food. And that's something that we kind of assume, man, some fish did that every once in a while, or maybe those were just a few fish out there. No, there's times when it's a lot of fish that are out there, and the fall is when that is more than any other times. But that's what I like about it, is what we learn.
Well, and that's a good word, because I have always heard my entire life, and I'm an old man compared to you, right? I'm 62, but it's the fish around structure, fish structure, fish structure, fish structure. And that's what you can see in the structure that is under the water, whether it's standing timber or, like you said, rock piles or drop offs, whatever. Fish structure, fish structure.
Yeah.
But what you're saying is that not necessarily.
No. There's a lot of times when I rephrase that. There's a few times of the year when the vast majority of bass are out there. Now, a lot of the year, probably the majority, or at least half the population, are relating to that structure that we did always target. So we were at least around a good population of the fish. But those bluebird days with no wind, really starting in August, but certainly September, October, in our part of the country, you're in South Carolina, I'm in Tennessee. Those days in our part of the world, we're not even fishing around the majority of the bass in the lake, because they're just out there just swimming around, only relating to food. So the fact that we are locked in on some type of structure or cover, we're just hurting our chances, because we're not even fishing where the fish are. It's not that the fish aren't catchable. We're just not even fishing where the fish are. And then the other time of the year is like late winter, early pre-spawn. That there's a good population of fish that do kind of a similar thing again. That time of the year, it seems like the fish that are relating to stuff still, they've not been fished tremendously hard throughout the winter and early in the year like that. So those fish are a little more aggressive. They've not been pestered quite as much. And so you can still generally do okay with those fish. But there's certainly a lot of fish even then that are just out swimming around in the abyss, and they're very catchable. You just have to put a bait in front of them.
You just got to find it. And that leads to this question, excuse me, is when you're doing that, it seems, and this is going with a few fishing guides at times who were using it, that when you're out there in the abyss, as you say, the middle of the lake, and you're fishing that forward face and stuff, they're throwing pretty much shaky heads, or it just flew out of my head.
That other thing. Man, isn't
yeah. And that's it.
Yeah.
That's all they're throwing.
Yeah. And that honestly leads me into the negative part of it.
That's good,
because it is like it's the thing that dominated forward facing sonar fishing. Jerkbait was a big player really early on. Even a paddle tail swim bait was a big player really early on. That transitioned to a jig head minnow pretty quick. It's just so natural, looks so real. It's not intrusive. It just looks like it's almost like you were twitching a fluke in front of their nose. Kind of, you can put it right on that fish's nose and bump him with a fluke. Well, there's probably a good chance he's going to bite it. So that was kind of what it went to really quickly. And of course, there's now the urchin style baits that are, taking over, and that's apparently the only thing you can catch bass on anymore. But that is the negative.
Yeah, at $18 a piece. Yeah.
That is the negative with forward-facing sonar, especially as a professional, because I'm sponsored by Rapala for hard baits and jigs and spinner baits and that type of stuff. I'm sponsored by Bass Pro for soft baits, and they both have big assortments of baits: jerk baits, crank baits, lipless baits, spinner baits, jigs, all these different styles of jigs, all these different shapes of soft plastics. Well, when forward-facing sonar was completely allowed every tournament all day long, you pretty much needed a jerk bait, a jig head minnow, and a Nico rig or a drop shot worm.
That's it.
That's pretty much what you needed. Now you could almost throw the worm out and replace that with an urchin, and that's pretty much what you need. So like it makes our bass fishing industry where, you'd go to Bass Pro and you'd buy, I saw Ott catch them on a OG Rocco, so I'm going to go buy a couple square bills and this guy caught some on a chatterbait, and this guy caught some flipping a jig, and so you're buying a couple of these and a couple of those, a couple of these, a couple of those. Well, you go buy a pack of jig heads and a pack of minnows.
You're done.
You're done, and so that because bass fishing at a professional level is much more of an industry, in my opinion, than a sport. And then we're an industry that is very self-revolving and self-feeding, and that we need the diversity in tackle sales and hard baits and soft baits. We need all of that to generate enough sales so that those sponsors then can sponsor the league, sponsor the anglers, and it makes that whole makes the wheels on the bus go round and round.
It's that old saying, what wins on Sunday sells on Monday.
Right.
Yeah. We're fortunate here at Christian Outdoors to have quality companies supporting our mission, and Mueller Optics is a perfect example of this. Since 2007, Mueller Optics has had one mission: to bring the passion of hunting and shooting to everyone. Mueller Optics' aim is to offer top-tier rifle scopes that won't break your budget, making quality optics more attainable for enthusiasts like us. Now, I started using Mueller Optics scopes last season. Not only was I impressed with the cost of these scopes, but the quality of the glass and the ease of operation was as good or better than other brands costing 3, 4, 5 times as much as the Mueller Optics scopes do. Whether you're building the rifle for the hunt of a lifetime, an ultimate whitetail setup, or trying to make your 22 perfect for small game hunting and plinking, Mueller Optics has a scope for you that will outperform any other scope in its price point. And to further help Christian Outdoors, if you use promo code COP for Christian Outdoor Podcast, COP35 at checkout, you will save 35% on your purchase. Just go to MuellerOptics.com to find out more. Here's a question I haven't asked a bass angler before, and I'm going to ask now. How much time do you actually spend not officially practicing? You're allowed to practice during this time and that time on these lakes, but y'all have nine tournaments a year?
That's about right. Yeah, we have 7 regular Bass Pro Tour. We have heavy hitters. We have Red Crest. That gives you the 7. And then we typically, pretty much everybody will fish 2 team series events in the fall as well. So that's 11. We've got the World Bass Enterprises tournament this year, which I should end up qualifying for if I can catch a few fish up in Ohio at our last one. And then there's also the Ultimate Angler World Championship and the Black Bass World Championship. So there's a few other stuff, but just in MLF, 9 semi-regular tournaments plus the 2 team series, which are kind of bonus events, so just depend on how you count them.
All right. So between those, and they're mostly monthly, 1 a month. There's a couple that's 2 a month, but mostly 1 a month.
Yep.
What do you do between times? Do you spend a lot of time practicing and, as you said, learning the forward facing stuff or trying different baits, or how much actual time do you spend practicing, or is all that time dominated by sponsor requirements?
Yeah, it's some sponsor requirements. I do spend some time, what I would call, really practicing or, trying to learn new stuff like that. But honestly, that time I spent 4 or 5 days last year really just locked in on trying to get better with forward facing sonar. And that's the most that I've done something to that extent in a minute, because and just my skill set with fishing is, it's pretty diverse anyway, I feel like. And that certainly was, looking at it, that was the biggest hole that I had.
Right.
And it's something that I will spend some time, there's been a new transducer come out and I've got one on order. And so I'm going to have to learn the nuances of it. So it's probably going to be a similar kind of thing this year once I get that in. But that I'll have to spend a few days, but truly what I would consider hardcore practicing in my off time, not a lot. I spend a decent amount of time fun fishing, here around the house on the rivers and that kind of stuff, but that really doesn't really apply, I feel like, to the tournament kind of fishing stuff. But when I'm home, the time with Jenny and the kids is my primary focus, because when I'm gone, I'm gone. So when I'm here, I try to be here and be present with them.
That's awesome. And let's talk about this, and then we'll transition to the next part of the show. Is you say you're gone. So a tournament, let's say it starts on Monday, I guess, right? For your
our practice would, like, we typically will travel on Sunday. We practice Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday's an off day, and then we start Thursday. So Thursday, Friday, everybody fishes. Saturday is the knockout, and Sunday's the championship.
So, all right. So in MLF, Saturday is the knockout, not Friday.
Correct.
Okay. And then Sunday, the top 10 guys.
Correct. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So you don't cut a check unless you made the top 10, right?
No, unless you make the knockout round. So like 50 guys fish Thursday, Friday, top 25 fish Saturday, and that's the pay cut. Okay. And then Sunday is the top 10.
So there's 2 cuts basically.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. So if you make Saturday, then you at least cut it some kind of check. You at least covered your expenses, hopefully.
Yeah. It's if you make a check on ours, it's the top 25 gets 15,000. So it's entry fees about 6,500 or so a tournament. So you made some money. But
you made a little bit. Yeah.
You don't want to miss one of those.
No, because by the time you cover your fuel getting there, your hotel, your food, your fuel for your boat, and all those kind of things, it just eats at it. Eats at it.
Absolutely.
But you're in a good location in Tennessee where you're kind of centrally located there.
Yes.
But you don't have what's your furthest drive? Texas?
This year it was Texas, which we had 2 down there. We had 2 events that were one after another, thankfully. But we fished at Waco, and then we fished at Brownwood, which was OHIV in Lake Brownwood. And we actually had about 5 tournaments in a row that were kind of out in the middle part of the country. And this year I was able to line it up where I always left my rig somewhere out in that part of the world and ended up flying back and forth between those. I'm not a fan of that, because I love to bring my rig back home and kind of unpack, clean out, reorganize, regroup before the next event. But it financially, it didn't make any sense, and time wise, it didn't make any sense, because it was 14 hours home to drive or whatever it was. So I ended up leaving my rig out there multiple times this year. But those were the furthest events.
Those 14-hour drives are fun, aren't they?
Oh yeah. If you love misery,
especially when you're by yourself. It's like I called everybody in my contact list. I've listened to 6 audiobooks, every podcast available, and I still got 7 hours to go.
Exactly.
All right. Well, as we said beforehand, here at Christian Outdoors, we love to talk about your passion for fishing, but also your passion for Christ. And everybody I've talked to in the industry always says, you need to talk to Ott. You need to talk to Ott. You need to talk. He's got a great testimony, a great story, and I'm excited to hear it personally. So would you mind sharing that? And I usually start this off with a very simple question: did you grow up in a Christian home, or is this something you came up to later?
Yeah, absolutely. For me, my parents are still married and both still living to this day. My dad's 87, and mom, that would make her 70. There's a 17-year difference between them, but they're both still living and both in pretty good health. But growing up at a young age, we'd go to church 2, 3, 4 times a year, something like that. But I can remember being probably 9, 10 years old, somewhere in there, and mom and dad, both been like, we know we need to make, church and our faith more of a priority in our lives. And then, I've got a brother that's a couple years older, than I've got a stepbrother that's quite a bit older. But for my brother and I, Sonny, that, it was like, we need to be a better example, and, go to church more frequently and that kind of stuff. And so that's somewhere in that age, 9 or 10 years old, somewhere where that, kind of took place. And we'd actually went to a Methodist church for a few years, and then started going to a Baptist church not long after that. And somewhere around that 12 or 13 year old range, again, I'd been in church for a few years at that point, and I'd kind of heard the gospel a little bit, but really didn't fully understand. I felt like I knew who God was and who Jesus was, but I kind of knew a little bit about them, but that was it. And then there were a couple deacons that were deacons at that Baptist church. And not long, I mean, we'd only went there once or twice and had been visiting, and they actually came to the house and actually truly laid out and shared the gospel for my brother and I, kind of in a one-on-one setting. Like I was 12 or 13 years old. My brother would have been a couple years older than that, so 14 or 15. And we both prayed to receive Christ then, and then followed through being baptized there in that Baptist church shortly after that. But that for me, that was when I came to Christ. So at a pretty young age, you know, and that was when my walk began. But for me, I really didn't start, I would say, living out my faith as a Christian till after Jenny and I were married. I mean, we, went to church and everything, but really didn't do anything, I guess you could say, with my faith until after Jenny and I were married. And kind of a similar kind of thing in that once we got married, we were like, we need to, really kind of take this more serious for both of us before we start a family. And that was for us. That was when we started following the Lord closer, and really making our faith more of a priority in our life as a married couple as well.
How does that impact your career?
What I saw early on, Pete, was that when Jenny and I, after we'd gotten married, and then she started traveling with me to some of the tournaments at one of them. So I back up even from that. So when I was young, going to Bassmaster Classics, somewhere in that 11, 12-year-old range, got to meet Jay Ellis at one of those. And Jay's always an outspoken Christian, just loved who he was as a person, got to meet him at those, and would see him year after year. We went to 9 of those in a row as I was a kid. And, so just got to see him year after year after year, like every August, and just was always a fan of his. But he was such a nice guy and so personable to us, but he was also very open about his faith. And, anytime he was on the stage at the Bassmaster Classic, would always give God glory for, a great event or a terrible event, whatever it was. Mm-hmm. And so that always made an impression on me. Well, when I started fishing the FLW series and the FLW tour, Jay was fishing there. Then he wasn't fishing Bassmaster anymore. He was fishing FLW. And they had focus meetings. It was Fellowship of Christian Anglers Society. They would have those focus meetings at the tournaments. And when the Jenny was with me, she said, let's go to that, because one of it was actually the tournament director at the time, or the MC, I'm sorry, was speaking at it. And I was like, man, let's go to that, and we'll listen to him share his story and speak. And so we did. And of course, Jay was there, and Glenn Chapelier and Mark Rose, and a lot of guys who were, strong Christians, and, who were using fishing to share their faith. And went to that and was like, man, God actually can use this in a way that I never would have imagined.
Hello, everyone. This portion of the show is being brought to you by High Mountain Seasonings. With the fall hunting season starting, one of my favorite ways to use my game meat is making jerky. And as long as I've been making jerky, I've found that the kits from High Mountain Seasoning are the easiest, best tasting, and complete sets on the market today. With 7 different flavors to choose from, the jerky kits from High Mountain Seasoning are your go-to choice for game meat jerky. And you can find out more at highmtnjerky.com.
But going to those focus meetings, and guys like Jay Ellis and Mark Rose and Glenn Chapelier and those guys were there, and they, to hear them share their testimony. And a lot of these events, it wasn't just like the group of anglers. Like these would be at they call them a Meet the Pros event, and it would be a opportunity, to the public where people could come in and they would hear something about fishing, but they were going to hear the gospel. And that was when it really, I really noticed that God could use fishing for something more than just being a cool job. Like for me, up to that point, I just wanted to be a professional angler because I love to fish. I didn't realize that it was possibly a calling put on my life to use this platform of professional fishing to be able to talk to people who would otherwise never come in the doors of a church or never talk to somebody and never hear somebody share their faith. So that was when that transition for me went off, that, hey, this isn't just about me having a cool job, getting to do something that I love to do, and getting to provide for my family doing it. This has, an opportunity to mean much more than that, for the lives of the people that I could come in contact with. So that was for me, that was kind of when that transition happened, and started looking at that part of it.
Yeah, and that's important when somebody is as well known as you are, who lives in the public eye, who has a huge fan base following, which is a humbling thing in and of itself, that
It is,
people
yeah.
care enough about what I do for a living that they want to
Right.
follow me that
Yeah.
closely. It's kind of overwhelming at times, isn't it?
It definitely is. Yeah. I mean, that's, it's a odd phenomenon. I don't know any other way to describe it, that people do, care that much. It is unique. Yeah, I don't know a different way to describe it, but it is an odd feeling.
It is. It is when they want to have their picture made with you or an autograph or something.
Yeah.
Like, God, why?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm flesh and blood, just like you. I mean, we're kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's a great story. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that very much.
Absolutely.
What would you say, and we'll wrap up with this last question. What would you say would be the highlight of your career now pushing 20 years in the sport, or what would you say would be the highlight?
I mean, definitely the Bassmaster Classic. Winning that event right here in Knoxville, where I grew up. So many family and friends, and just, I mean, that, no question, sleeping in my own bed, right here at home, and driving down there to go to blast off, go to Thompson Bowling Arena to weigh in. All the things about that. That one would definitely be it. The MLF wins are certainly all special in their own way. My first BPT win was definitely special. It was just in the second year of the BPT, but I felt like I'd had some close chances before that, and it's funny because they're hard events, but they're actually really easy events to win because of the way the weights reset and that kind of stuff. So you just have to be the best one day of the week. Just has to be on the right day. So it's on one hand they're easy to win, and on one hand they're really hard to win. So that makes those really special too. But definitely that Bassmaster Classic, there's probably nothing in my career I could ever do. The Classic's been here in Knoxville a couple other times, and obviously that one was the first one here, and the only one I fished. But I truly think I could win it 5 more times at home, and it would never mean what that first one did.
Sure. So what does the future look like for Ott?
I'm 41, or am I 41? I'll be 41. I'm 40. I'll be 41 this year. I'm not quite there yet. I would like to fish professionally up until about 50, 50, no more than 55 in my mind, is like, actually touring and doing that kind of stuff. But Abby's 19, the twins are 15. So they're getting older, and at that age they'll be, I would assume that they'll be all moved out of the house by then. But so I hope so. So it just be curious as to see what life looks like, with them at their ages. But yeah, I would like to not be traveling as much then at somebody else's schedule. Like what we have to do as professional anglers. If I want to travel, be wherever Jenny and I want to go, at that point in time. But or we don't travel a whole lot at all. We just stay here and get to go to church every Sunday, and kind of do the things that we want to do on the times that we want to do them. So, but yeah, that's the thing with professional fishing.
Well, it's a sponsor driven sport activity, and as the economy gets harder, then the sponsorships get harder to obtain. You and I both know that, here on the podcast, we are linked very, very closely to those who support us.
Yeah.
And without their financial support, it would be really hard to keep doing what we do. It'd be almost impossible.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it would. And that's, I look at some of the younger, extremely talented anglers, coming up, and I think of the era that I came up in, and not too far into my career was when social media really took off. I mean, started in 2006. That was it, 2011 or 12 was when a lot of social media really started taking off. And prior to that, boy, TV was the thing. I mean, the TV shows, the edited, Bassmasters or FLW Tour shows, that was that was the top of the heap as far as media coverage goes. And magazine and print was still really big, which is completely the past. Podcasts, didn't hardly even exist. So there was none of that kind of media either. And so what social media and YouTube and live streams, that first classic in 2015, I think when Bass, I was there fishing that. It's been over 10 years ago since we've had live fishing, and it to me it feels like it was just yesterday. I mean,
I know.
It's only been half my career that I've dealt with the live cameras in boats, so it's just things have changed, and who knows where it's going after this.
I bet those cameramen get in your way a lot, don't they?
They really don't. I mean, they are very good at that. They've been yelled at, I think, enough by some other anglers, so they do a really good job of that. The thing is, they have a lot of gear. Like, they've got a lot of batteries. They've got spares for this, spares for that in case something breaks. So that's the gear more so than the person.
Yeah, I can see that.
What can get in the way.
Yeah, but you live on the front of the boat anyway, and they stay in the back, so
it's
not that bad.
Yeah.
Tell people how people can follow you if they want to. Is Ott DeFoe Fishing or?
Yeah, our website, ottdefoe.com, has got a lot of stuff on there, but all the typical places: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. The good thing is there aren't a whole lot of Otts, and there's not a tremendous a lot of Defoes. So if you put about either one of those, you're probably going to find me. So that's the good part. So but yeah, any of those kind of places you can usually find me pretty easy.
Awesome. It's truly been an honor for you to take the time to speak to us here on Christian Outdoors. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that.
I appreciate you, Pete. It's been a good time, and thank you for allowing me to come on and share a little of my story. And
thank you, brother.
Hello, everyone. It's Pete Rogers here with the Christian Outdoors Podcast. And we recently joined the team of Life Audio. I want to thank them for their partnership with us on this podcast. If you go to lifeaudio.com, you will find dozens of other faith-centered podcasts in their network. They've got shows about prayer, Bible study, parenting, and more. You'll also find Christian Outdoors there. Again, that's lifeaudio.com.